Hello everyone, my name is Michael McCann from the Wayward Art Company, and welcome to part 2 of this character creation tutorial for Blender 2.77. And in part 1 we had just finished modeling most of the body, so now we're going to move on to the head. And a lot of you had asked in the comments why I didn't start from the concept phase or creating my reference image in Photoshop or GIMP, and I will be doing a tutorial on this in the future. But I sort of categorize that underneath of character design and not necessarily character creation. For this tutorial, I thought it was best to use a reference image that actually showed the geometry lines so that Blender users of varying experience could actually follow along. So with that being said, let's start on the head now. So in order to create the head, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a cube, but I'm going to add it in object mode and then later join it in edit mode. So again, make sure that you are in object mode and type Shift A and add a cube and drag it up to where the head is in the reference image, of course. And on the side view, I'm not really worried about the nose or the muzzle. I'm just trying to fit it into like the main head space. Now type W and choose Subdivide Smooth, which turns the cube into a sphere-like shape. And I can scale this on Z. Now I'm going to add another edge loop and scale on X so that it's about the width of the cheeks. And now I want to put another edge loop above the center line and another one vertically down the right side. And the edge loops, of course, are done with Control R. Now I want to go into wireframe with Z and then B to box select and delete those vertices. Okay, so now I can select the head and then shift select the body and use Control J to join them. Now in edit mode, I can edit the head and make it a little bigger, of course, because the subsurf would have smoothed it down a little. It's a little wide in the side view, so I can scale it on Y. Okay, so now I think we're going to add the eyes. And this vertex here is about where the eye will be. So what we want to do is select the 4 faces around that vertex. And then sort of position it so that that center vertex is right where the eye is. And then use the eye key to inset. And then X and delete faces. Okay, now I want to select this entire loop and type W, choose Loop Tools and Circle. And that, of course, rounds out the eyes. I can scale it down a little and position it over the reference image. Now I can press E to extrude back and S to scale in, and then repeat that one more time. E to extrude back and S to scale. And that gives us the opening to add our eyes and eyelids. I want to select these 2 edges above the eye and press G, that's G twice, and that's the edge slide, and that will lift those edges up a little bit. Those vertices are actually what will make up the brow. But right here I want to pull the eye back a little bit so that you can see the eye from the side, this like little curve in the reference image. So I can select these 3 edges and these 3 edges and just pull them back on Y. Okay, and I also want a little bit of a curve on the bridge of the nose, so I can pull these 2 edges back as well. I can wait and maybe do this once I create the muzzle, because I'll probably edit it some more, but I can start by just pulling the brow out a little and then pulling those edges between the eyes back. Okay, so that looks good. I also want to pull back the center vertex between the eyes where the brow is. That's going to help to define those brows. But enough of that for now. I want to start on the actual nose, the mouth, the muzzle area of the character. So I'm going to select these two faces and extrude them out on Y. And then we can add a loop right in the middle, which will help us create the mouth. But actually, before we do that, let's just go ahead and get the shape down. Let's grab this edge here and pull it up so that it fits along with the reference image. And then I can grab these two faces in the front and pull those up and maybe rotate them so that they're a little straighter. Now I can add my loop with Control R. And I want to select the couple of edges in the front there and position it over the mouth. But first I need to grab the two edges in the front and pull it down to the chin. And then I can rotate and grab these and position them over the mouth in the reference image. And I'm going to add one loop around the nose and the mouth with Control R. And that sort of bunched up some of those vertices around the where the eye meets the muzzle. So I'm going to select some of these faces and press W and choose Smooth. Do that a couple of times. And that spaces out the geometry a little bit. Now I can select these three edges and type a V, and that of course is the rip tool, and it opens up the it separates it so we can create the opening of the mouth. So in the right orthographic window, I can pull these edges down and then select the edges that make up the top of the opening of the mouth and drag those up with G, and then rotate them with R, and maybe pull the front two back. And after I add the nose, I'll have a little more geometry to work with, but for now I'm just trying to get it as close as possible. Now I want to select the loop that makes up the mouth, so I'm going to hold Alt and right click on that edge to select the mouth, and then type E to extrude and scale in. And I need to make sure that my pivot point is set to median point, so I can scale in. I'm just going to pull the corner of the mouth back a little bit, which pinched those faces. So I'm going to select these two faces, press W and Smooth, and it looks better. And now I can go ahead and start working on the nose. So I can select these two faces and press E to extrude, and then scale those faces down and move them closer toward the center. And now I need to move the whole front area of the muzzle back a little bit so that I can extrude the nose out. Okay, then I can just select these two faces in the front and extrude them out. Rotate them slightly. And then select the loop where the nose meets the muzzle and scale it in a little bit. Maybe the tip of the nose I can pull out to give it sort of a like a heart shape almost. And now that area looks a little bunched up, so I can select this edge and press W and Smooth. And of course now it looks a little too narrow, so maybe I'll just select this edge along the side and pull it out. And you know, tweaking vertices is it's part of the creative process. You don't have to do any of this, just get it to however you think looks best. And now I think I'm going to go ahead and attach the head to the body so we can create the neck. And I'm going to go to Face Select and select these 4 faces. And then type X and delete those faces. So I can select this entire opening and position it at the base of the head, or the skull, and just scale it so that it fits the reference image, and then start to extrude it down. So E to extrude, and scale it in on Y. And I'm just going to fix where the bottom of the jaw meets the neck there. And extrude this edge down again. And then scale it in on Y. And to make this edge a little more flat, I can press S and Z to scale on the Z axis only. Now E to extrude down again. And if I hold Shift, I can select both of these edges. And then press W and bridge edge loops. And now the head is connected to the body. We can start on creating the ears. So if I select these faces and then I go into front view and press Z to go into wireframe, I can make sure that those 3 faces are lined up with the ears in the reference image, which they are. Then I can press I to inset. And now maybe I want to use the edge select to just select these 3 edges and pull them back a little, because I don't want the ears to be too wide. Then I can smooth out the loop around them and select them again. And now I'm just going to extrude them out and position them where the tip of the ear is, and rotate it so that they're straight. And now I'll type S Shift Y, which scales on the X and Z axis only. Okay, and now I can add another edge loop with Control R right in the center, and again scale Shift Y. We're excluding Y from the scaling because we don't want them to get thicker. We just want them to get, wider from the front view. And now I'm just shaping the back of the ear so that it's curved outwards a little. Okay, and I also want them to curve forward, so I can select these 3 faces at the top and just push them forward. And that adds a nice curve to the ear. And I'm not going to be doing a lot of detail on the inside of the ear, but I do want there to be a little bit of a rim. So I'm just going to select the 6 faces on the inside of the ear and press I to inset. Okay, now I can extrude those back a little and scale it in. And then select the edge from our first inset and just pull that out a little bit. And that just creates a little bit of a rim around the ear, a tiny bit of extra detail. Can pull it out a little more just to make it a little sharper. And I'm going to pull these 2 edges down so that the base of the ear is a little wider. And maybe pull this out a little just to define the cheeks a little more. Okay, I could sit here and tweak things for hours, but that would get awfully boring. So I think I'm going to move on to creating the eyes and eyelids. So I'll tab into edit mode and I'll select this loop and type Shift S and choose cursor to selected. And that actually looks like it's out a bit far. Maybe I'll select the back loop. Okay, so Shift S, cursor to selected. Okay, so now I can type Shift A and add a UV sphere. And because this has a subsurf on it, it doesn't need this much geometry. So I can take the segments and the rings down to 8. And then scale this down so that it fits within the opening for the eyes. And now that I'm looking at it, they do look like they're set a little farther back than I want them to be. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete them. Yeah, I think I had it right the first time. I'm going to select this center loop here. Shift S, cursor to selected, and then Shift A, UV sphere. And this should already be set now to 8 for the segments and the rings. So I can just scale them in. And yeah, I think that's better. Alright, so now I can select this center edge and press V, which will disconnect it, and now we have 2 half spheres. So if I hover over the bottom and press L, that will select everything, and I changed my pivot point to 3D cursor, and now from side view I can just rotate it down. And I'll do the same thing for the top, select it with L, and then rotate it so that now the eyelids look open. Now I can select both of these edges by holding Shift and selecting them, and extrude them in. And that gives the eyelids a little bit of a rim. Okay, so I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. Now, since the 3D cursor is already in the right position, we can go into object mode, and we're going to add the eye. The eye, of course, will be a separate object. It won't be part of the same mesh as the rest of the body. But in edit mode, I'm going to scale it down and rotate it on X 90 degrees. So that's just RX 90. And then I will give this a subsurf. Okay, and I'm just going to scale it in. It's not matched up exactly with the reference image, but that's okay. I think, as I said in the first part, I've modeled this character 3 or 4 times, and each time I did it, it was a little different. Okay, so now we need to create the other eye, and in order to do that, we just have to select the eye, and in our modifiers tab, I'm going to select the array, and under the relative offset, I'm going to take this into a negative value, and in order to line it up perfectly, I can hold Shift, which will allow me to do this in smaller increments. Okay, so that looks better. And I'm noticing now that there's a bit of a gap between the eyelids and the opening for the eyes. So I can just fix that by selecting the loop inside and just scaling in until it looks like it fits around the eye. Okay, so that's better. And now I can start on the nostril. So I can just select this front face and press I to inset. And then I can scale this on Z, make sure that the pivot point's back to median point. Scale it on Z and drag it down to fit the reference image. And now I could just extrude this face back, but because this is such a small face, I'm just going to use the poke tool, which is Alt-P. And that just creates one vertex in the center. Now I can drag that vertex back. And that's it. That's the nostril done. I might want to clean it up a little bit. So maybe I'll select this loop on the inside and just push it forward a little. Now it looks like I need to pull the nose back a little bit to line it up with the reference image. Okay, it's looking good, and I think the nostrils are a bit big, so maybe I can just select this loop again and scale it down. Okay. Alright, so that looks good. Okay, I'm just selecting this edge and pulling the cheekbones out a little. And I can give him smooth shading. And I think we're probably ready to start on the tail, because then all that will be left is the inside of the mouth. So I'm going to select these faces, and I can't use eye to inset because that insets each face, even the mirrored side, individually. So I'll use E to extrude and push this towards the center, and then delete those faces. And then select that loop, and then W, loop tools, and circle. And now I'm just going to use the reference image as a guide to extrude this tail back. But if you were going to be doing a lot of animating with this character, it might be wise to just extrude the tail back and then let the armature do the work for posing. And when I say back, I mean straight back. I mean, you would want to lock it to the y-axis and extrude it straight back. In my case, I'm not going to be doing a lot of animating. I'm just going to be doing some still renders. So it basically makes more sense for me to have the tail in a position that's more natural, so that I don't have to do a lot of work with the actual armature. So I'm just extruding this up and rotating the edges to fit along with the reference image. And then when I get to the end, I can just scale down and press F to add a face. And now I can just clean up these edges by scaling them in and rotating them so that they fit a little more closely. Alright, so he's pretty much done now. All that's left is the inside of the mouth. But you know, that tail looks a little thin, so I'm going to just select maybe these two edges and just scale it on X. Maybe just this edge. Scale on X. Okay. That looks a little better. But yeah, I don't want to tweak this too much right now because we're close to half an hour. So I'm trying to keep each video about between 30 and 40 minutes long. So yeah, let's do the inside of the mouth. And this will be really easy. We're just going to select all of the faces that make up the muzzle, so the nose and the bottom jaw. And then hit Control I, which will invert the selection, and then I can press H to hide. So now we can work on the inside of the mouth without the rest of the mesh in our way. Okay, so I'm going to select this back edge, and then extrude it toward the center so that it meets, and then select this loop and just press F to face. And now I can do the same thing for the top. I can just extrude that together and then select this loop and press F to add a face. And so now it looks like it's all connected, but it actually isn't. There's two vertices just there in the center that need to be merged. So if I go into wireframe with Z, I can select both vertices. So you can see here I've selected two. And then press Alt-M and merge at the center. And now everything on the inside of the mouth is connected. And now I can select these faces and press E to extrude, and then E to extrude down on Z, and scale those faces in. But it left the rim, or where the lips are, a bit thin, so I'm going to select these edges and push them toward the center so that that edge of the mouth is a bit thicker. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the top, just E to extrude, and then E again on Z to move the roof of the mouth up. Okay, and the same thing here, just select the edges on the inside of the mouth and push them toward the center, giving a little more thickness to the inside of the mouth. Alright, so now the back of the mouth, this is all pinched, so I can select these faces and press W and smooth. I'll do that a couple of times. And now I want to drag these faces back because, obviously the inside of the mouth, goes back pretty far, and I can scale it up. Maybe pull it out a bit as well. Okay. So now I'm going to select these faces and press E to extrude. Scale that down. And then select the faces around it and just press W and smooth. And then these four faces will make up the tongue. So I can just press E to extrude this forward. And I can scale the tip down on Z so that it's a bit thinner than the rest of the tongue. And maybe pull these faces out so it's a bit wider at the end. And I think the back of the throat should come back a little further. So I'm going to select all of these faces, not the tongue, but just the faces in the back of the throat. And I'm just going to pull this back a little. Okay, I think that's a little better. And in case I want to do some animation with the tongue, it needs more geometry. So I'm just going to press Control R and scroll up on the mouse wheel and add a few more loop cuts there. And now I can unhide everything with Alt H. And I think we're probably done for this video. I think in the next one all we'll have to do are the gums and the teeth, and then we can actually start with the texturing. Yeah, I'm going to pull the throat back a little bit, and it also kind of looks like the tongue is a bit of a weird shape, so I'm just going to fix this really quickly. I can just select these faces at the tip and press W and smooth those vertices. And then maybe select the top faces and just pull those down to flatten the tongue out a bit. Okay, I can't spend too much time on this, but as I said, the next time we'll be finishing up the inside of the mouth. We'll add the gums and the teeth, and we'll start the UV unwrapping, and then potentially we'll start the texture painting as well. But I do want to spend a little more time with the UV unwrapping because a lot of you have asked me to, do some tutorials on that. So anyway, thanks for watching the second part, and I will see you next time.